Military parents never miss a beat, and neither does the Johns Hopkins U.S. Family Health Plan. Built for every warrior in your family, with more than 40 years of service to military families. TRICARE Prime benefits plus exclusive extras. Learn more at warriorsathome.com.
Hello, listeners of Yeah, We Read It. This is the podcast where we, two best friends, read young adult novels from our past as 20-somethings. My name is Laura. I'm one of your hosts.
My name is Meggie, and I'm your other ASMR co-host
And
today.
this is the wrap-up, the calmest of wrap-ups to our 9th season, where we read all of the John Green books. And that was it. Did you like my intro, Meggie, where I was really just like calm and like seductive in like an NPR kind of way?
Yeah, honestly, you can make a lot of money just based off of that kind of voice.
Hey, one day, one can hope. That would pay for my student loans.
ASMR is so wild to me because some of the ASMR will just be like someone with long acrylic nails just on the mic, and I'm like, who enjoys that?
I know. I feel like anytime somebody tells me they like ASMR, I love to like get a description of why. And like, I never get an answer, you know? They're like, it just sounds good. And I'm like, but so does music, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Some people like ASMR, some people like music, some people like reading old young adult novels to make themselves feel youthful, young,
Aw,
nostalgic, and have a podcast about it.
that's so true. And this is our podcast, 9 seasons, Meg. Can you believe that?
I
Can
can't
you
believe we've been
believe?
doing
Take a
this
second.
for
Can you
so
believe
long.
that?
It's almost been 3 years of us doing this, no?
Yeah, come October, it'll be our 3rd year.
Ay caramba.
I can remember time flies, and we're inching closer and closer towards 100 episodes of this podcast. So it's very, very exciting all the way around. And I always like these episodes because they're so informal, where we just kind of talk about the season.
Yeah.
And this is a little different though, because we have done so many series. So now a season made off of one-off books. I don't really know where to start. Do we start with our least favorite books? Do we rank them? Do we start with our favorite books?
Honestly, I think I wanted to start off with, like, ranking them. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what my favorite were, and I don't really count Let It Snow in the John Green discography.
Interesting.
Because that's just, like, he had other people with it.
But he
I
did for Will
definitely
Grayson with Grayson too.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Because I feel like I'm like, okay, that one and Will Grayson. I mean, Will Grayson, I consider more of his because it
That's
had
true.
more of
He
his
wrote a
writing.
lot about it. So
Um,
okay,
I
we'll
mean,
take Let Us Know out of the universe and we'll
okay,
just focus on the others.
I think, I think quite obviously we probably have the same least favorite, which is An Abundance of Catherines.
Yeah, 100%. At the very bottom of the totem pole, it has to be An Abundance of Catherine's.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then I think second to last is hard because I could swing Paper Towns or Will Grayson there. I think
Mm,
comparatively looking at like this list of books, those would naturally fall in the last 2 spots before
the rest.
Abundance of Catherine's. Yeah.
You know, yeah, I think I agree. I think I would make an argument for Paper Towns as my second least favorite because I
Yeah.
think it like maybe made a lot more sense to me not to make everything black and white, but like when I was straight and like I wanted like guys to chase after me in my youth
Mhm.
as a means of feeling like wanted and loved and like giving myself security I couldn't give myself.
Mhm.
And now it's like I was looking for parts of me more so in Will Grayson,
Yeah.
as kind of a fully realized, adult who understands their
Yeah.
sexuality more deeply, and I also think the way that David Levithian wrote his Will Grayson and,
Yeah.
the nuances of, like, character that I think that, oh god, is such cringe millennial humor of, like, not much, just, like, thinking of, like, death and dying and
Yeah.
going to the graveyard and, like, watching rats blend together. Like, weird, like, things that you added to it, I was like, "That feels very teen for the specific time." So I
Yeah.
think I will do Paper Towns and then Will Grayson, and then obviously Abundance of Catherine's is a big
Yeah.
stinker.
See, I'm torn for our bottom 3 here when it comes to, the, but before the very last of Catherine's, just because it's like Will Grayson and Paper Towns, I think both had so many flaws in a way, in the
Mhm.
way that their stories were told. But then it's like when I think about Paper Towns, I'm like, so many parts of that ending in Paper Towns are written so beautifully. Contrast that to the absolutely insane ending of Will Grayson, and I think the ending of Paper Towns, despite the fact that I kind of hated that they still like made out and kind of got together in a way before ultimately breaking up immediately, I might put Paper Towns just an inch ahead of Will Grayson for that reason.
I do think Paper Towns had a concise ending.
Yeah.
I think if I took me out of the equation, which is very hard to do
But yeah,
as
why
a
would we do that?
closeted narcissist, um, but I think Paper Towns is a much stronger book
Yeah.
altogether than Will Grayson.
Yeah.
Will Grayson, just for the personal aspect, I would go with Will Grayson. Will Grayson, but I think
Okay.
the idea of like Paper Towns and like trying to escape Paper Towns, and then also like coming to the realization that like maybe you just are a paper town is,
Yeah.
I think, not the
It's
worst
deep.
lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
like you
our
don't
bottom.
have to. Oh,
Oh, sorry,
sorry.
go ahead. No, you go ahead. Meg.
I was gonna say you just like I think that learning you're not special, but that's okay is like
Yeah.
really hard lesson that takes a little bit of time to like realize.
That's
You
so
know?
true. I love that we all like we're so starkly agreed on like this is the bottom three and then this is the top three.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like re-adding everything in my head as I'm looking at all these titles, being like, there's only the six if we're not counting Let It Snow.
Yeah.
Um, but there's only the six if we're not counting Let It Snow. So for our top three, we would have Alaska, Fault in Our Stars, and Turtles All the Way Down, which
Yeah.
I think is a much harder ranking system to do than our bottom three. Because like the bottom three, I'm like, we're like, yep, we're in agreement. Those are there. But the top three becomes so hard because those are easily his best works. They're
Yeah.
both profound and deep in their own individual ways. Like in kind of a way, it makes it hard to believe that John Green was able to write three different meaningful books centered around grief and everything and in completely just inherently different ways, you know? Like there's still like those themes that he deals with, but all of those books do read completely differently amongst each other, in my opinion.
They do. They're all like different processing of grief in the same way.
Yeah.
Whereas like Looking for Alaska is you're watching like or well you yourself are like going through it watching like a friend, and I think since Colin, no, wait, Colin was Abundance of
Yeah.
Catherine's. I don't
Pudge or
uh,
Miles.
yes, Pudge, like Pudge having a friend who was very close but like only a few months. Like I don't think the relationship was as deep as The Fault in Our
Mhm.
Stars, is like processing grief of like someone you've lost that you loved, but like The Fault in Our Stars, I felt like the grief was like so paramount because she herself
Yeah.
could succumb to death at any point in time. And then like Turtles All the Way Down is so far removed of like, how do I support someone I love when they are going through this?
Yeah. Yeah. And also like somebody who has survived kind of grief and like the fact that she's lost her father and now she's kind of dealing with her life after that. So it's like those themes of grief like are in such different points in someone's life, which I think is also just really cool and really good. It's just like those are all just three really well written books.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of crazy because I feel like he wanted to make The Fault in Our Stars the most profound for processing
Yeah.
grief, and I do think it was sad at points, but like Looking for Alaska for me is the death book. That's
Yeah.
like the grief book.
Yeah, no, and it's like, I don't know if I would argue that it's like, oh, he's writing this to be profound. Because John Green doesn't have that, in my opinion, does not have that air to him that he's like trying to do anything. Like, I feel like John Green is just like trying to tap into themes that we all go through. And I
Yeah.
think that's why he has such like a following, because it's not like he's trying to like get a lesson completely through you. He's more trying to get a feeling through a few pages, you know?
Yeah, and oh boy,
At
does
least
he do
at
it.
least that's how I read it, because it's not like I feel like sometimes when you read YA, it's very much like we focus on the black and the white, but I feel like John Green does live in these gray areas, which I think makes him a lot different to other YA authors.
Oh yeah, no, nothing feels forced until it's like Abundance of Catherine's feel, which is like
That,
clearly
like,
he had a book deal and a deadline.
it's like, yeah, it's a sophomore slump. We said it on the air and we'll say it again, but it's like, if you removed Abundance of Catherine's from his repertoire, like, John Green would have written amazing books, like, pretty much. So, arguably Paper Towns, but like,
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be such a different conversation if we knew Abundance of Catherine's didn't exist, because that is truly one of the worst books we have
Yeah.
read for this podcast.
Like, I think
Um,
Paper Towns being his stinker would have been a little bit more excusable than the
yeah,
absolute fucking of
fire.
offensive fire that was Abundance of
I
Catherine's.
know, yeah, because it's like Paper Towns at a base level, it's fine, and it's like if that was his worst book, I'd be like, that's okay, but yeah, that was just, it was offensive, it was a lot, it was weird, it was unnecessary.
Like, I think
Um,
there's such an argument, and like I think the most recent example I can think of is like the Seven Husbands of Evelyn
oh,
Hugo,
I need to
and
read that.
she makes a the main character like biracial, and then
Mhm.
the main Evelyn Hugo is like bisexual, and I read this Vanity Fair profile that she did that was like damned if I do, damned if I don't, or like the idea of authors being like, if I don't write it, like who will.
Mhm.
And I think it's like already I think that doubts like your ability to just like write something that people can relate to regardless of like race, gender, religion, sexuality. Like if you write what you know, and it's like things like grief, like looking for Alaska, and like
Yeah.
I mean, or like you have a strong writing team, which I felt like he did for The Fault in Our Stars, and like Turtles All the
Mhm.
Way Down also was like a bit of him because he struggled with OCD. Like
Mhm.
people will take tidbits from it, and you don't have to pander to an audience.
Yeah, yeah, that's such an important lesson, I think, in the world of creativity and like creating, where it's like you can have representation without making their story representation.
Yeah.
And that's such a, I think, important lesson for literally every media to learn, because I feel like so often I see so many like TV shows, they're like, well, we have to do that, we have to check our boxes now.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not what representation is or should be about.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. It's like that's what I think Bridgerton does it in a really good way, where it's like, because I just watched Bridgerton the third season, so that's why I'm bringing this up. Where it's like they
Mhm.
have those conversations of race a lot more in the third season than I think they do in the earlier seasons, but they do have all race represented, and they talk a lot about like the black and white differences between these people more, but that's not the entire story. Like,
Yeah.
like it's a bigger part of the third season, but it's not like that's the only thing driving this conflict or this only thing driving their narrative, which is like important.
Yeah, and like it becomes obvious when you're like tokenizing someone in the kind of progressive leftist way of like, we need
Yeah.
more diversity, so we're just going to put these people here, and
Mhm.
that's just going to be the only investment that we have. And it's like, if you want to tell that story, you have to have zero ego, which is,
Yeah.
you know what? I want to tell this story. I can't. So I'm going to employ a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I mean, these aren't tools that we had to talk about or society really cared to talk about in the early 2000s when John Green was
Yeah.
like engaging with this and writing with it. But it definitely, in hindsight, is still something that objectively like makes him a much less strong author. And the fact that,
Yeah.
like, I mean, the fact that the only thing that he apologized for when looking was saying the R word in Paper Towns. I mean, like, you
Yeah.
know, like how many queer slurs did you have? Like how many other like
Yeah.
marginalized groups did you alienate? Like it really kind of like I mean at times like I don't think like I mean I'm sure we've seen like the F slur a lot. It was early 2000s, but like
Yeah.
the amount of times that it happened made me so tired with the John Green
Mhm.
season. And it's like that
Yeah.
sucks when he has like shit like The Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska where I sobbed, and like Turtles too, you
Mhm.
know?
Well, and I also think it's really important and I don't want this to sound like dismissive of what he's done, but it's also important to watch that how he has grown with the times, just like we all have. Because
Yeah.
it's like, I remember when I was a kid, all of us were saying the R word. A lot of people were saying the F word, like things like that. That's not just
Yeah.
like, unique to us, and like I can't act almightier than that. Like, how could he? And I'm like, I can absolutely see how he could do this. Everyone did.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that it's hard. It's very much like calling the kettle black, because like as a white people, we're all, you know, guilty of that, especially as
Yeah.
being people who lived in that times. Obviously, like we were much younger, but that also doesn't make it, you know, better or anything like that. And it's also important in my eyes to recognize that like by the time Fault in Our Stars and Turtles came out, there is no R word, there's no F slurs anymore. There's not a lot of those things that we really had pause with. Like, so
Yeah.
in a way it is showing that it's like he is changing, and in a way those books were a product of that time, and obviously I wish that he addressed them more, but it's a possibility he has, and I just haven't addressed, like read into it more. But that's kind of how I'm looking at it, through that kind of critical lens of
Yeah.
these books that we read in the early 2000s were horrible in a lot of very offensive ways.
Yeah, and I mean, I like, they are definitely products of their time. I think I just,
Yeah.
like, there's gotta be, like, I wish that the first thing that came up when you Googled Abundance of Catherines was, like, an outright apology. That's, like,
Right? Like, yeah, no, and it's like I don't think that this is me being too nice. I want that to still happen. I feel like it's not like, oh, he could never do that now. Like
oh, no, he
he should
definitely
be
could.
listening to this podcast and be like, Laura and Meggie, you're right. I should really address these things that I did.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just like it's never too late to apologize, as Timbaland
Yeah.
and Justin Timberlake,
Well,
or
yeah,
was
and
it
I
that who sang
it's
apologize?
today I think it's
Oh, was
Timbaland.
it One Republic?
It might have been One Republic.
Might
I
have
was
been One
thinking
Republic.
Timbaland.
I don't know.
Man, that's the theme of this season.
They
It's
all
too
blur together.
late to
All of the
apologize.
early 2000s music.
Yeah, no, but like it's yeah, like we could talk, I think, a lot about this season specifically. With there's a lot more offensive things in this book than a lot of the other, or sorry, these books than the series we've read. Save for Vampire Diaries, which that I think book 5 is still one of the most heinous things we've ever had to read, on
Oh,
so many
yeah.
levels. That went beyond like textbook offensive.
Yeah, that was God, that was such a train wreck. I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like also, I mean, it's like holding your idols to like a degree of like, we probably grew at the times, but we also didn't grow like publicly in the sense that like
Yeah.
John Green did. And when you
Yeah.
grow publicly, there's a much more different certain degree that you should be held to.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that is just one aspect of John Green as a whole. We have still not ranked our top three.
I know. Sorry, we got on a big tangent of just like life and how offensive the early 2000s were.
Yeah, it was. Hey,
Oh, the conversation that I love to have.
they
So
were
let's
something.
go top 3. It's hard. Okay, I think I'm gonna start with my top, Meg, and because I think I need to do this. I think I'm gonna put Turtles as my number 1.
That is so interesting. God. Okay, so that is your top one.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
I'm between two. So why is
yeah.
Turtles your top one?
So I think Turtles for me, as we've went through this season, and not even just because this was the last book, I think that was the book that I was thinking about the most after it ended. That was the book I
Mm.
was really like going back and like writing a lot of like quotes down for. And it also, I think, felt so real to me in a way that it felt like, in a way, sometimes Alaska felt like out of touch or very secluded or very much only relatable to a specific audience of like, oh, you went to a private school and this, that, the other thing. And Fall in Our Stars also felt very much like this is relatable in a very niche sense of somebody who has suffered such horrible things at a young age. And I think something about Turtles All the Way Down really spoke to me as a person with anxiety and my own mental illness. And it also felt just so different in the way a lot of YA books read and are written and talk about characters. And to have a book that I think didn't, villainize or glamorize mental health and really had it as a thing that affects the individual and the people around them without, attacking it or, making someone the victim and things like that. Like there were so many layers to it that it's like he did it so well in my mind. And so I think that's why. And there was just so many layers and levels to it that I really, really loved. And it's yeah, I think it just really stood out to me as a good book. As a plain old fucking good book.
Yeah. I do think like I think Turtles is like the perfect counterpart to Looking for Alaska. That's why I
Yeah.
have like a bit of a cuz I think like inadvertently like I think Alaska is a manic pixie dream girl and you know, we talk
Yeah.
about it how she's like aware, but I always related a lot to Alaska in the sense of like you spiral and then you just do that like
Yeah.
insanely chaotic destructive thing of like drinking and driving like maybe like you know your mom has died and you just like spiral and you're so
Mhm.
destructive and then I think like Turtles gave a voice to that destructive thinking of
Yeah.
like I'll have a lot of problems with like you know like I just spiral and I'm like just die just like do something very drastic
Mhm.
and so, I mean, I think Looking for Alaska, I my gut is saying that that was my favorite. I think that
Yeah.
it was like god, the end of Looking for Alaska was my favorite. I think I don't know if it's
Mhm.
like I've experienced a lot of loss in the past few years.
Mhm.
That made that good. It's hard when it's like a guy is the protagonist. But I related a lot of like my college experience, I think, to like
Mhm.
Looking for Alaska because like constantly taking in art and then like just always having that at like the forefront of your mind and then kind of
Mhm.
utilizing it as like a means of voicing your own suffering or others' suffering. I thought that was really relatable. God, I could make a case for both because I could also go into
Right? Like,
Turtles.
that's the thing I've always liked about this season where it's like, I feel like with some of these seasons, like we talk about the book and it's like, yep, that's most of like everything I have to say. And I can focus on a few other things, but there's a lot of big themes in these books that it's like you could find things to talk about for hours with them. Like, and that's
Yeah.
why I think a part of these episodes were so much longer is not even because we had guests on, by the way, thank you guests. It's because like there is so much depth in these books and so many layers and so much to discuss in a way rather than like Massey and Claire just through a fashion show or
Oh
or
my god.
other fun stuff we've read. And that's the thing where it's like even like ranking these books I'm like is that where it should be? And I'm like and I could like wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, you know what, I should have said that. Oh, because it's
Yeah.
like they're such thoughtful books,
I mean, it gives so much depth to the teen psyche that we
Yeah.
haven't gotten. You know, like these are real people, but they're also young in the sense that it's like they have their whole life spanned in front of them, but they also like have so many very adult problems that like,
Yeah.
you know, like you said, the click. It's like was I doing a fashion show in middle school? Probably not. I was probably doing a sleepover, orchestrating like a dance with like my
Yeah.
friends, and doing that shit at a sleepover. And yeah, I had those aspects, but that's so surface level. I was also like, you know, I don't know, feeling like I wanted to self harm because I was alienated from friends who I could see hanging out without me, like MySpace top 8. Why did we ever do that?
I didn't do that. I didn't have a MySpace.
Oh my god, you're
No, but
so
I also
lucky.
wonder if that was like such a big reason for John Green's popularity is because he wrote books about teens going through like real problems.
Yeah,
Granted very real and dark problems a lot of the time, but like he wrote I think characters that were going through things that were relatable to us regardless. Like even when we talk about like Let It Snow or like Will Grayson, these books that we didn't like as much, like there were still like moments that I was like, man, I remember feeling like that when I was a teenager.
yeah. I think I felt that the most with Turtles, which makes me
Yeah.
wanna change, I think,
Yeah,
my
exactly.
answer.
And that's why I ranked Turtle so high because I was like, that just it really was so weird to read about spiraling in a way that I was like, oh, this is creepy how real this is.
Yeah, because I think I always had, like, such an anxiety as, like, a teen growing up of,
Yeah.
like, doing the wrong thing and, like, spiraling and doing things that
Mhm.
weren't good for me, and then, like, having it be both something I mean, I thought was, like, cool, and that was also because I was, like, you know, engaging with, like, the OC and British skins, and it's not like my show was a TV show, and then also knowing, like, you're really hurt and was bad, and I think that, like, Turtles did a really good job of anchoring her and being like, don't do this, you're okay. And then also the spiraling,
Yeah.
that I loved.
That's
It
the
was
thing.
so good.
No, it was so cool to have like a main character that you relate to, but you don't want to, and you do, and it's not a bad thing. Like that was like to be able to do something like that is really, really difficult to do, I think, in the world of writing. So that's why it has to be number one for me.
Yeah, I mean, like, even, like, both of them, like, I thought I was the main character, but I'm also not as, like, I think, quiet as her. I'm more abrasive, like Daisy,
Yeah.
and then that drove me crazy because I was like, I hate that Daisy doesn't listen. But it's like
Yeah.
she also has her own shit going on, which is, like, non-confrontational.
Yeah.
So, all right, so does that mean that we leave The Fault in Our Stars at number 3 probably for both of
I
us?
think Fault in Our Stars has to be number 3, and I think it's I love Fault in Our Stars. I'll be honest. I loved it when I first read it. I said this on the podcast. I read it the a night I had the stomach flu. It was New Year's Eve. I read it all in one sitting, and I was sad for my stomach flu, and I was sad from this book, and I just like cried, and I rang in the new year. And this book was still
Was this as an
so
adult or a teen?
I think it was like maybe like my freshman year of college or something, or it was either
Oh,
like my
okay.
senior year of high school or like my freshman year. So I was like, I was still a teenager. Thank you very much. Well, if I was like, this was when I was 24.
I would
No,
have
but
been like,
I was in Ohio when I read it. So I was like, I had to be
oh, okay.
I was either in high school or it was my like for
Christmas
like
break?
freshman year of college, because that was like the first like the last times I was home for New Year's. But no, I still love Fault in Our Stars. I think it is a very beautiful and very sad book still.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I think I feel like it's earned a place as number 3.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. I think that Looking for Alaska is number 2 and Turtles is number 1 probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, and I think that's fair. It is interesting though that it's like our top 2 books are like his most recent book and his very first book.
I
And
know.
then everything else is kind of spread out in the middle. No, but
Yeah.
this was such like I said, interesting season because it was so different from what we normally do. We normally are like, it's a series and it's just us and we had friends on and we got to meet new characters each and every week.
Yeah, and I
Um,
did like having friends on because I mean, I don't know, maybe it was just me processing my own shit and always putting it into a podcast. Um, but I feel like it was like I would like to say a bit cathartic, probably for everyone to like revisit
yeah,
a piece of like our past and how we interact with it now.
yeah. No, I think it was nice for everyone and to be like, oh my God, yeah, like I remember being like that, or I can still relate to that, and everyone just like kind of validating that. And that was I think the best part about our therapy sessions, especially in the later books.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was a very real season, real world, when they stop reading books and start getting real.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of wild too. I mean, like I think the biggest example I can think of in my mind was like Nick really agreeing or relating to Will
oh
Grayson
my God, yeah.
and like the fact that it's like I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was like when I was reading Turtles, like Daisy just like drove me crazy cuz it reminded me of me and I feel like
Mhm.
Nick also expressed similar like
Yeah,
limitations and it's kind of nuts. It's like a reflection of like how we also feel and like take care of like our past self of like things that
yeah.
we would have wanted to go back and change.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a really good way of putting it. And this is a big tangent, but a part of me like also wonders because John Green, this book came out in like what, like 2017, I want to say
I think it was
2018.
2018. It was
That's
2017.
that's 6 years ago, and he hasn't come out with a book since. And I think Looking for Alaska had to have come out in like 2009.
I think he kind of shift gears because I know that obviously he has his own podcast because he got inspiration from us.
Yes,
But
yes.
he
He started
has
it first, knowing that we would do it after him, but it was our idea.
yeah, so he was just trying to obviously
Yeah.
push us out of the market. But I do know that he has a new book that is called The Anthropocene Reviewed. It's like it's essays from his podcast of it's more like
Cool.
nonfiction-y, I'm pretty sure. But
Yeah.
it's not like at all, it's not young adult, which is
No.
is such a vibe shift. Oh, it's essay,
Well,
it's memoir.
Well, okay, so I did look it up. Looking for Alaska came out in 2005. Turtles came out in 2017. That is 12 years of writing books. That's like a book every 2 years when you think about it. Like, that's what a prolific career. And also a part of me wonders, like, I don't know if John Green got into this world of YA because he was like, I really want to write young adult novels. But I also wonder if he kind of got a lot of critical acclaim and accolades that he wasn't expecting. So maybe it's that he's at a point where he's like, I don't want to let people down. I would feel like if I was at the kind of level in the world of literature that John Green is, like you have to feel a level of pressure when it comes to writing because it's like, oh, if it's not as good as this, like what's the point? Um
Yeah. And I feel like that's like a lot of the conversations I will have with like friends of mine who have published books or like are in the process of publishing books is like the
yeah.
constant need for perfection, and at some point
Yeah.
you just publish something and all of them will constantly be like, you know what? There's things I could have done differently. And like I just had to stop at some point writing and
Yeah.
rewriting. And like, I mean, I feel that too on like
Yeah.
essays where it's like, you know, with journalism, I have a deadline and I
Yeah.
also need to get paid, so I'll turn it around. But like with personal writing to me, I have like an ongoing page of like 20 Google Doc pages that has one paragraph of like a
No.
personal essay.
No, I think that's a relatable feeling in any world of creating, whether it's film, writing, whatever. Because it's like you could fixate on something and want it to be perfect, and it's like it's never going to be perfect.
Hmm.
At least that's how I approach like any sort of film stuff I make. I'm like, there's got to be a time that I just have to kind of let it live on its own.
Yeah.
And I'm sure John Green does that too. But you know, it's a big thing to wonder. It's like maybe he won't come back to YA ever. Maybe he'll just kind of let it be, or maybe he'll come back in 10 years. Maybe he won't. But
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems kind of like his path was always going to be. It looks like he majored in English and also
yeah,
religious studies, which is really interesting for Looking for Alaska. And then after he graduated 5 years later was when he
yeah.
published Looking for Alaska.
Yeah. Oh man. Now knowing I remembered Austin when he was on Looking for Alaska saying that he majored in like religion and then I think who
English.
else was telling us that like he like was like a like priest or something. That's the wrong title, but he would be like in like working in like a children's cancer center.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like you kind of get these blips of like almost like how he feels about religion now, because like especially in Fault in Our Stars when he was talking about like the support group and like the heart of Jesus in this. So that's another interesting thing to think about. But another
Yeah,
thing
I
that I'm sure
know.
we could talk about for minutes and minutes and hours and all of that. But that's I think that's my favorite part about this season is there's so many different thoughts and feelings to dissect and relate
Mhm.
to, and that way it's like in a way you can just talk about them forever.
Oh, yeah. Like, absolutely. He
Yeah.
interweaves so many different plot points in that are so great.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's very prolific. He has his times, but I do love the fact that you bring up like religion and how his, I guess, thoughts change on it over time,
Mhm.
especially like in Looking for Alaska, where I feel like it's like a constant question of what the afterlife is, and
Yeah.
with turtles, it seemed like more present about death because it was just how do
Yeah.
we take care of Russell Pickett's affairs and estate
Yeah.
now, and there was less of it. Like it seemed like it was more like how we're connected to the universe more
Yeah.
than what part we play in the universe.
Yeah, exactly. I guess and also just like how you kind of cope afterwards. I feel like that was a big theme in Turtles All the Way Down too, about like how you continue carrying on. So
Is there a quote or like any standout thing from the books that you've either been quoting or
oh,
that's been on your mind for a while?
oh my gosh. Still like everything I read in the Turtles All the Way Down episode plus the ending of Turtles All the Way Down, those have been the big standouts to me. And then also the line that I read in Paper Towns on air, which was the one about they're saying that they're going to rate each other and Q acknowledges that like we're saying these things that we may or may not do because
Yeah.
it is this that helps us like kind of comfort ourselves and like the fact that we don't know what's going to happen with our relationship or our friendship or our lives. Like so we're basically like we might be lying to ourselves and we don't know that we are yet. And I thought that was just such a beautiful like saving grace of paper towns. Because it's again
Yeah.
like John Green can write a fucking ending. Like that is something we know through and through. Like I think like Let It Snow, like even all of us were like, what the fuck is this? And then like the ending was just so like good. And so yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
where my head is going with that. What about you?
I mean, like, you know, like that Paper Towns quote kind of follows in Turtles when he says, like, nobody says goodbye without wanting to see you
Yeah.
later. I really liked that one. Hilariously, the quote that like sticks in my head that I can't stop quoting or thinking about is the one in Will Grayson, where he says, planets like tiny need new moons, and sometimes
Oh
moons like me need new
yeah.
planets. Because I think it's put into like frame a lot of friendships that have maybe ended for me, and then also like how much space I took up or like didn't take up in
Yeah.
those friendships and what I want from friendships going forward.
Mm-hmm. No, that was also a really good quote. No, what if I was like, I don't know if any passages stuck out, but I'm still stuck on how Tiny climbed the rafters at the very end of Will Grayson, Will Grayson.
You're like, I really like God, I don't even remember the people in Abundance of Catherines, but the side character, the comedic relief wanting to be called Daddy. You're like,
Oh.
I really liked that part of John Green's discography.
I really liked the part in Let It Snow where he realized cheerleaders are people and that he also has cheerleaders at his school. So it's really this kind of entire thing was a problem to begin with. So
I love that. I love the idea of like John Green spent forever trying to make up in his later acts what it was happening in Let It Snow, which was okay, we'll start with a female protagonist in The Fault in Our Stars. Okay, maybe females are actually fully realized individuals in
I mean,
Turtles.
and that's the thing where it's like, John Green at some point just like learned how to write female characters with like Fault in Our Stars and Turtles all the way down, where it's like they didn't feel like they were, trying to be anything. They were just very much like, I am a person and that is what I am. And it was like, oh, this is actually really refreshing and relatable.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. They
Yeah.
were really great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
I don't
man.
know how many more thoughts I have on John Green, but what are you
No,
thinking?
I think before we talk about our 10th season, we have to do our Justice for character and our canceled character
Ooh,
of the season, which is fun because now we have so many characters to pick from and so many situations to pick from as well.
this is so true. God, that is a great question. There's so many, you know. Oh, you know what? I feel like justice for Gus, honestly. I kind of wish he hadn't have
Yeah.
died. I feel like I mean I get it. It's a good twist in The Fault in Our
Yeah.
Stars, but like he was so sweet and so like wanting to give so
Uh
much love that I mean that
yeah.
just like hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, that one did sting a lot. A
Yeah.
part of me also would say like Justice for Alaska because it's just like that one was just like really unfair too. Like,
Yeah. I would have
yeah,
loved to explore her mentality, which I mean, you know, as I
right?
said, maybe it was a little bit along the lines of
The
Turtles, but
the
damn.
yeah, the entire just like world of like not knowing what it would have been at all was just so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
was
how
the other one?
cliche us picking the dead characters to justice for.
And they deserved it. They deserved
They deserve
justice.
some justice. Let's talk canceled. Let's talk our canceled people.
God. Okay, I'm not even gonna consider Abundance of Catherines because that's just easy. That's just
Yeah,
like
I think
chump
it's best we
change.
just take a step back from that for our sanity and for our mental health.
We're on site. I'm gonna have to he probably would have guessed this. I'm gonna cancel Q.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I thought he was a terrible friend. I thought he
Yeah.
was not being there for like his buddies
Oh my god. And the
whatsoever.
creepy thing with the boobs that he wanted to see. And we were just like, you're unlikable.
He wanted to see people making out. He
Creep.
wanted to he got with the girl in the end, which should not have. Never I have such a problem and like I think I was thinking about this as I was driving my 50-minute commute back
Yeah.
to this route, but you feel so degraded too as like being the manic pixie dream girl, which I have
Yeah.
been repeatedly for guys, either of my own like politician or of just like they saw me online and think I'm really cool. And it is
Yeah.
like such an exhausting thing that I was just like, man, I fucking hated Q. Because you
Yeah.
get so many expectations and then you completely ignore the real person. And then that real person is always wanting to meet your expectations and getting anxiety from it. So
Yeah.
fuck Q. Hate him.
Yeah. I'll concede to that. I think that's a really good thing. And it's like I think my biggest problem with Paper Towns is that like he partially still got Margot in the end. And I think I would probably have a different opinion of the book if Margot like shut him down and was like, buddy, we're just friends. Like that's my like one
Yeah.
very big qualm with that. Not I'm saying my one qualm with that book, like I haven't listed off 20 other problems with it. So that's one of my many problems with that book.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that brings us to our season 10 reveal,
Let's
right?
go. Woo woo.
Season 10, we're going to be revisiting an author that we love so dearly. Maybe we'll get her on the podcast, maybe we won't.
Hey, we're gonna try.
Hey, who's to say?
What's to say?
But we're going to be talking about The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. I really loved To All the Boys. Reading those books felt very cute and sincere. So I'm really hoping we kind of get some of those feelings revisited. Especially because I never really read these books and I haven't seen the show either. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this world.
I am really excited to read the books and then watch the show.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be so much fun.
And it's basically summer when this season comes out because we got a couple weeks break. We're coming back.
And maybe we'll finally turn pretty.
Meg, I already turned pretty, but I'm really hopeful for you.
Thank you. I'll buy one of those like Polly Pocket dresses or whatever they're called.
Oh my god.
Isn't there like a brand that's called Polly Pocket that looks like you're like a cottagecore wife?
I don't know.
Polly? I don't know.
Oh, Princess Polly. That's what you're thinking of.
Princess Polly. I'll get a Princess Polly dress. I'll be a Jenny Han character. I'll go to the beach.
I can't wait. I can't wait to talk about this book, and I can't wait for our 10th season. I still can't believe that. That is crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah,
we did it.
We're zooming through this year. Look at us go. But I guess any closing thoughts, Meg?
No closing thoughts. John
Head
Green,
empty.
you liked one of our tweets, and then that gave me fodder to try continuously tweeting you. And I just kind of want to know why you stopped liking our tweets.
Did he like any of our tweets?
He liked the very earnest one I said about looking for Alaska and not understanding it in my youth because I was just trying to get tweets out there. And then I thought, oh, this is the first John Green tweet I had. Maybe he'll come on the podcast. He never liked them again.
I think he didn't like my tweets where I said, move over Vlog Brothers, the podcast cunts are coming through. Or I said, instead of sicko mode, I'm going to go hog wild. So I think I might have gotten in there. And maybe John Green was like, they're not as sentimental and smart as I thought they were.
No, but if you want to see our non-sentimental and non-smart tweets, you can follow us at Yeah We Read It on Twitter and TikTok. We're also on Instagram at Meggie_and_Laura.
And if you're feeling crazy and want to yell at us for not being smart or sentimental enough, make sure you send us an email at MeggieandLauraPresent@gmail.com. We would love to discuss this discourse with you.
Yeah, and maybe if you send us an email, we'll rank our favorite guests from this season and really cause drama.
Yeah, if you send us an email, we're going to rank our guests, and that way we're going to find out how many of our guests actually listen to this show.
We're going to rank our friends from most likely to least likely to survive on an island.
That's a really good ranking, and I feel like everybody would be really understanding with those rankings, because I have some opinions on that.
Okay, we'll talk off air.
Thank you all for listening. Bye.